Tourism has always been more than just vacations, airports, or sightseeing. For many countries, and especially for the United States, it is one of the most important arteries of the economy. People may see planes full of tourists landing in Los Angeles or New York and assume this is only about hotels, restaurants, and souvenirs. But in reality, the flow of visitors generates trillions in revenue, supports millions of jobs, and sustains entire communities whose daily survival depends on international guests. Tourism is also deeply tied to national identity. For decades, America has been marketed as the land of opportunity, a place where people from all over the world could find adventure, business opportunities, and cultural experiences they could not get anywhere else. But in recent years, this perception has been shaken. Behind the glowing lights of Las Vegas, the busy sidewalks of New York, and the sandy beaches of Florida, a quieter, more troubling story is unfolding, a story of decline. More than 60 million visitors who once came to America have disappeared from the statistics, leaving behind empty hotel rooms, closed restaurants, laid-off workers, and anxious communities. This collapse did not happen overnight. It has been slowly building through the combination of higher costs, stricter visa requirements, growing competition from cheaper destinations, and social crises visible in many major American cities. If you stand on the Las Vegas Strip today, you will still see neon lights, performers, and advertisements for world-class shows. But look closely, and you will notice the gaps. Hotel lobbies that were once impossible to cross without bumping into hundreds of travelers now feel strangely spacious. Dealers at blackjack tables wait longer for players to sit down. Bartenders serve fewer drinks. Taxi drivers circle the strip, searching for customers who are no longer there. These are not isolated incidents. This is the new reality of American tourism in 2025. Take Las Vegas, which has long been seen as a money-printing machine for the entertainment industry. In the 1990s and early 2000s, Vegas set record after record for international tourism. Visitors from Europe, Asia, and Latin America filled the casinos, hotels, and showrooms. The motto, "What happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas," became one of the most famous slogans in the world. But now, many of those visitors are simply not coming, according to 2025 reports. Las Vegas experienced an 11% drop in international travelers compared to the year before, and hotel occupancy rates fell by more than 15%. In a city where profit margins rely on near-constant high occupancy, these numbers are devastating. 2 out of every 10 rooms remain empty each night. Casinos report millions in lost revenue because their gaming floors are not filled. It is not just about fun and entertainment, it is about workers. The bartender who once mixed 200 drinks a night now makes barely half. A hotel housekeeper who used to clean 15 rooms in one shift is sent home early because there are fewer guests. These changes translate directly into smaller paychecks, overdue bills, and growing economic stress for working-class families. Why has Las Vegas, once unbeatable in its appeal, lost its shine? The reasons are layered. Rising airfare costs mean that flying from London or Tokyo to Las Vegas can cost nearly as much as an entire week-long holiday in Southeast Asia. Hotels on the Strip have raised their nightly rates to cover losses, but in doing so, they have priced out middle-class travelers. Visa requirements add another barrier, with waiting times stretching into months in some countries. And beyond the paperwork, there is a shift in perception. International travelers increasingly see Las Vegas as a symbol of excess and expense. While other global cities offer newer, trendier experiences at lower costs. The impact is devastating. For a city that employs nearly 230,000 people directly in the tourism sector, even a small percentage drop translates into tens of thousands of struggling families. Seattle offers a different but equally sobering perspective. Known as the birthplace of Starbucks, Amazon, and Microsoft. Seattle has long been a magnet for Canadian tourists and international visitors, fascinated by its tech-driven culture and picturesque landscapes. But today, nearly 27% of its overseas visitors have disappeared. The Port of Seattle, once buzzing with cruise ships carrying families from Europe and Asia, now operates below capacity. Tour guides fluent in French, Spanish, or Mandarin report that their services are no longer needed. One local guide who spent 20 years showing visitors around Pike Place Market now works part-time in retail. His skills in foreign languages wasted. The reasons behind Seattle's decline go beyond just the strong US dollar. Gas prices remain historically high, discouraging Canadians from making cross-border road trips. Visa complications discourage Europeans and Asians from spontaneous visits. And most importantly, the city's affordability has collapsed. Hotels that once charged $150 per night now charge over $300, and dining out has doubled in cost within a decade. The coffee culture that once charmed visitors now comes at prices that shock them. A simple latte can cost $8, making tourists feel unwelcome in a city that once prided itself on casual, laid-back vibes. The pain extends further south to Portland. Portland has always been marketed as a quirky, creative hub filled with independent shops, breweries, and food trucks. It attracted international visitors looking for something authentic, something different from the massive corporate tourist traps of larger cities. But now, Portland faces nearly a 30% drop in international arrivals. The reasons are both external and internal. Fewer international flights land at Portland International Airport, and when flights do arrive, they are more expensive. The strong US dollar makes local goods and services unaffordable for visitors from Canada, Europe, and Asia. At the same time, Portland's homelessness crisis has become highly visible, leaving some visitors feeling unsafe or uncomfortable. Independent business owners who built their lives around steady tourist flows now find themselves on the edge of bankruptcy. One brewery owner recently admitted that he had to cut half his staff because tour groups simply stopped booking. For many, Portland's decline feels especially tragic because its identity was always tied to small businesses and community spirit. Now, those very businesses are disappearing, replaced by empty storefronts and survival mode operations. Detroit's decline paints an even bleaker picture of what happens when tourism is not seen as a priority, but is still essential for survival. For decades, Detroit's name was synonymous with cars, the birthplace of Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. The city became the industrial backbone of America and symbolized the nation's manufacturing might. Yet, as factories closed and jobs disappeared, Detroit reinvented itself partially through tourism. Canadians crossing the Windsor border kept hotels busy, while small museums, Motown tours, and sports events drew modest but steady crowds. Now, even that lifeline is shrinking. International travel to Detroit has fallen by 17% in 2025, and the effects are visible everywhere. Hotels near the Ambassador Bridge, once filled with Canadian families looking for weekend shopping sprees, now sit at less than half capacity. Restaurants that depended on cross-border traffic are cutting hours or closing entirely. The currency imbalance is a critical factor here. The strength of the US dollar compared to the Canadian dollar has made what was once a quick and affordable getaway prohibitively expensive. For many Canadian families, the same money can stretch further at home or in other international destinations that offer more value. Beyond costs, the perception of Detroit remains a hurdle. Despite improvements in downtown areas, international visitors still carry images of abandoned factories, crime, and poverty when they think of the Motor City. This perception discourages investment in tourism infrastructure and creates a cycle that is hard to break. Without the visitors, there is no money to revitalize attractions. Without revitalization, there are no visitors. For locals, this decline is devastating. A tour operator who once made his living from vintage car experiences now struggles to find clients, while small hotels and airlines that once survived on Canadian travelers face record cancellations. Detroit's situation illustrates a larger truth. Once a city loses its reputation as a destination, rebuilding it takes decades, not years. If Detroit reflects the fragility of struggling cities, Los Angeles embodies the contradictions of a global entertainment hub in decline. For generations, Los Angeles was marketed as the ultimate dream factory. Tourists flocked from all over the world to walk along Hollywood Boulevard, spot their favorite stars, or enjoy the sunny glamour of Santa Monica and Beverly Hills. But the dream has lost its shine. In 2025, millions fewer international visitors arrived in California compared to pre-pandemic years. For Los Angeles specifically, the drop is significant. Airline arrivals from Asia are down nearly 18%, while European travelers have declined by 12%. The result is a city still busy on the surface, but emptier in the places that matter most. One of the driving factors is cost. International travelers compare Los Angeles to other global entertainment capitals like Seoul, Mumbai, or even Mexico City and realize that the price of hotels, transportation, and dining in LA far exceeds alternatives. A single night in a mid-tier Los Angeles hotel can cost as much as an entire week's stay in Thailand or Bali. Dining out is no longer affordable. Visitors report spending $25 on a basic breakfast and nearly $100 for dinner at a mid-range restaurant. For families, especially those traveling from Asia or Latin America, these expenses make Los Angeles less appealing. Natural disasters also play a role. California's recurring wildfires, combined with droughts and earthquakes, have created uncertainty for travelers planning months in advance. Why risk spending thousands of dollars on a trip that could be disrupted by fire evacuations or hazardous air quality? And then there is perception. Tourists who arrive in Los Angeles expecting glamour often find something different. Homeless encampments are highly visible in downtown and even near popular beaches. Traffic is overwhelming, turning simple sightseeing trips into hours of frustration. The Hollywood Walk of Fame, once a global bucket list destination, is described by many visitors as underwhelming, dirty, and unsafe at night. Even attractions like Disneyland and Universal Studios face challenges. Tickets have become so expensive that some international families decide to skip them altogether, especially when the same money can pay for multiple theme park experiences in Asia or Europe. For the workers who depend on tourism, from Hollywood tour bus drivers to restaurant servers in Venice Beach, the decline has become personal. They report shorter work shifts, fewer tips, and shrinking opportunities. In a city built on the illusion of endless dreams, the reality is increasingly harsh. While Los Angeles struggles with its image, New York City, once the unrivaled crown jewel of American tourism's, facing its own decline. For decades, the words "I'm going to New York" carried a sense of awe. From Times Square to Broadway, Central Park to the Statue of Liberty, the city symbolized opportunity, culture, and energy. At its peak, New York attracted more than 13 million international visitors annually. Today, that number has fallen sharply. By mid-2025, New York recorded a drop of nearly 22% in overseas arrivals compared to pre-pandemic years. The streets still feel busy, but business owners, hoteliers, and workers all confirm that something is missing. The reasons are complex but familiar. First, the cost barrier has grown overwhelming. A single night in a Manhattan hotel now averages over $400, even for mid-range options. A Broadway ticket can easily reach $200 per person. Dining out is among the most expensive in the country, with visitors spending $60 to $80 per meal on average. For many international families, the expense is simply not justifiable. Second, safety concerns play a role. While New York remains safer than many global cities statistically, headlines about crime, homelessness, and subway incidents shape perceptions abroad. These perceptions discourage potential visitors who would rather choose destinations that feel more predictable and secure. But perhaps the most significant factor is what some analysts call the loss of uniqueness. Tourists who once dreamed of seeing New York in person now feel that much of what the city offers can be found elsewhere. The globalization of retail means that Times Square is filled with the same chain stores found in London, Paris, or Tokyo. While the lights are still dazzling, visitors often leave with the impression that the magic has been diluted. A traveler from France recently commented that he expected to feel overwhelmed by the uniqueness of Times Square, but instead he saw McDonald's, Starbucks, and clothing brands he could buy at home. The once special experience now feels repetitive, and that perception eats away at New York's competitive edge. The effects ripple across the economy. Taxi and ride-share drivers see fewer international fares. Broadway productions struggle to fill seats, even with heavy discounts. Museums that once relied on overseas visitors to fill their donation boxes now face budget shortfalls. Even the city's famous neighborhoods like Chinatown, Little Italy, and Harlem report fewer tourist dollars circulating through local businesses. For New Yorkers, the decline in tourism means more than lost revenue. It represents a gradual erosion of the city's global status as the gateway to the American dream. Florida has always marketed itself as the Sunshine State, a paradise where families escape harsh winters, retirees find relaxation, and international visitors soak in the beaches, theme parks, and warm culture. For decades, Orlando's Walt Disney World and Universal Studios were considered non-negotiable trips for families traveling from Europe, Latin America, and even Asia. Miami, with its Art Deco architecture, nightlife, and Cuban influence, became a magnet for those seeking glamour and tropical flair. Yet in 2025, Florida's tourism picture is far less certain. International arrivals have fallen by more than 14% since 2019, and while domestic visitors still come in large numbers, the spending power of overseas tourists has always been critical. A Brazilian family who once saved 4 years to fly to Orlando and stay in a Disney resort now finds the price tag unreachable. Park tickets for a family of 4 can exceed $2,000 before factoring in food, hotels, or flights. Add inflation and currency struggles in Latin America, and the dream vacation has shifted out of reach. Miami tells a different but equally troubling story. Once hailed as the gateway to Latin America, it now faces competition from destinations like Cancun, Cartagena, or even the Dominican Republic. These places offer the same beaches and nightlife at a fraction of the cost. For Europeans, the long-haul journey to Miami no longer seems worth it when the Mediterranean offers closer and cheaper options. Add the impact of rising sea levels, recurrent hurricanes, and concerns about safety in certain areas, and the shine begins to fade. Local businesses are the ones paying the price. In Miami Beach, restaurant owners who once thrived on international traffic now report entire seasons where their tables remain half empty. Tour guides who once filled boats for Biscayne Bay excursions now struggle to gather enough participants to make trips worthwhile. The economic weight of these losses is heavier than most realize, because international tourists tend to stay longer and spend more than domestic visitors, making their absence disproportionately damaging. San Francisco offers a cautionary tale of what happens when a city's reputation deteriorates faster than its leaders can repair it. For years, San Francisco was a symbol of tech innovation, counterculture history, and natural beauty. The Golden Gate Bridge, Alcatraz Island, Fisherman's Wharf, and nearby wine country gave it global allure. At its peak, the city attracted more than 2.5 million international visitors annually. Today, those numbers are sharply down, with Asian arrivals in particular falling by nearly 20% compared to pre-pandemic highs. Much of this decline is tied to perception. Stories of open-air, drug use, homelessness, and crime dominate international media coverage of San Francisco, painting a picture of a city in freefall. While the reality is more nuanced, perception often outweighs statistics in tourism decisions. Travelers planning their first trip to the United States may decide that Los Angeles or Las Vegas feels safer and more enjoyable, skipping San Francisco altogether. Costs exacerbate the problem. A standard hotel room in downtown San Francisco can exceed $350 per night, and dining is no less expensive than New York or Los Angeles. Visitors quickly compare these prices with experiences elsewhere and find little justification. Even iconic attractions like the cable cars or Fisherman's Wharf have lost their charm for some, with online reviews increasingly describing them as overcrowded, overpriced, and underwhelming. Local businesses feel the sting directly. Restaurants in Chinatown that once thrived on busloads of tourists now see empty seats. Wine tours in Napa Valley, which relied heavily on international groups, are forced to scale back. For the workers, the servers, bartenders, guides, and performers, the decline means fewer shifts and fewer tips. San Francisco's struggles highlight a dangerous trend. Once a destination loses its reputation for safety and affordability, recovery is far from guaranteed. Denver may not be the first city that comes to mind in discussions about tourism decline, but its story reflects broader shifts happening across mid-sized American cities. For years, Denver marketed itself as a gateway to the Rocky Mountains, offering urban culture paired with access to world-class skiing, hiking, and national parks. International visitors, especially from Europe and Asia, were drawn to its mix of nature and modernity. Yet, in recent years, Denver's international arrivals have fallen by nearly 10%. At first glance, this might not seem as severe as the declines in New York or San Francisco, but for a smaller market, the impact is profound. Hotels and tour companies in Denver rely heavily on overseas visitors who stay longer and spend more than domestic tourists. The loss of this income has been particularly difficult for businesses in mountain towns like Aspen, Vail, and Breckenridge, where international skiers once made up a sizable portion of winter visitors. Why the decline? Airfare is a major factor. Denver is not a primary hub for most international airlines, making it more expensive and less convenient than flying into coastal cities. At the same time, the rise of cheaper alternatives in Europe and Asia has diverted tourists elsewhere. For example, a European family can fly to the Alps for skiing at half the cost of a Colorado trip. Climate change also plays a role. Shorter snow seasons and unpredictable weather patterns make ski vacations riskier, reducing demand. For Denver's urban tourism sector, safety and homelessness mirror the challenges of larger cities. With some visitors expressing discomfort in downtown areas, as international tourism wanes, Denver faces a choice: either double down on domestic visitors or find new ways to attract global audiences. Without decisive action, its tourism infrastructure from ski resorts to cultural venues risks long-term decline. Chicago offers yet another angle on the broader tourism crisis. Long celebrated as America's second city, Chicago has always drawn visitors with its architecture, museums, music festivals, and food culture. Millennium Park, the Art Institute, Navy Pier, and Deep Dish Pizza have been staples of international itineraries for years. But international arrivals to Chicago have dropped by nearly 15% compared to pre-pandemic highs. Analysts point to familiar causes: rising costs, safety concerns, and the growing appeal of alternative destinations. For many international travelers, Chicago is seen as less essential than New York or Los Angeles. And when budgets tighten, it becomes one of the first cities to be cut from itineraries. Violence in Chicago, while often exaggerated in global media, has hurt the city's image abroad. Headlines about shootings and crime create a perception of danger that discourages international tourists. Hotels along Michigan Avenue report fewer overseas guests, and cultural institutions like the Museum of Science and Industry or the Field Museum face funding challenges as visitor donations decline. Even major events like Lollapalooza, once magnets for international music fans, see fewer foreign ticket sales. The decline hurts not just businesses but also workers, taxi drivers, tour guides, and restaurant staff all report lower earnings. For Chicago, the problem is compounded by the fact that tourism represents not just economic activity, but also a piece of its cultural identity. The city that once prided itself on welcoming the world now finds itself overlooked in favor of more affordable, safer, or trendier destinations. When viewed together, these case studies, Las Vegas, Detroit, Los Angeles, New York, Florida, San Francisco, Denver, and Chicago, paint a picture of an American tourism industry in quiet but significant decline. Each city faces unique challenges, yet the patterns overlap: rising costs, safety concerns, currency imbalances, changing traveler priorities, and global competition. The impact is not confined to businesses alone. It trickles down into everyday life, affecting workers, families, and communities who depend on tourism for survival. The hotel clerk in Orlando, the cab driver in New York, the server in San Francisco, the ski instructor in Denver, all of them are part of a fragile ecosystem tied to international visitors. As those visitors disappear, the ecosystem begins to collapse. Globally, the United States is not alone in facing these challenges. Europe, too, has seen dramatic shifts. Paris remains one of the world's most visited cities, but even there, international arrivals have struggled to return to pre-pandemic levels. Rising prices, overcrowding, and safety concerns have pushed some tourists toward alternative destinations like Lisbon, Budapest, or Prague, which offer similar cultural experiences at a fraction of the cost. Spain has seen protests in Barcelona against overtourism, leading to restrictions that inadvertently reduce international arrivals. In Asia, Japan and South Korea remain popular, but both face challenges tied to currency fluctuations and political tensions. Hong Kong, once a powerhouse of global tourism, has seen steep declines due to both political unrest and competition from nearby destinations like Singapore and Bangkok. The Middle East tells yet another story. Dubai and Doha continue to grow as tourism hubs, drawing visitors with luxury experiences and futuristic skylines. Yet, even here, competition is fierce, and costs deter some international travelers. Africa, with its untapped potential, struggles with infrastructure limitations that prevent it from fully capitalizing on its natural and cultural wealth. Across continents, the pattern is clear. Tourism is more competitive than ever, and cities that fail to adapt quickly lose their share of the market. The broader implications of this global tourism shift are profound. Tourism is not just entertainment or leisure, it is a lifeline for millions of workers, a pillar of local economies, and a soft power tool that shapes how nations are perceived. When tourism declines, the effects ripple far beyond airports and hotels. Governments collect less in tax revenue, which means fewer resources for schools, healthcare, and infrastructure. Communities lose their cultural vibrancy as museums, theaters, and small businesses struggle to survive. Workers lose not just income but dignity as the jobs they once depended on vanish. Perhaps most concerning is the silent nature of this decline. Unlike financial crises or pandemics, the erosion of tourism does not happen overnight. It is gradual, often invisible until the consequences become unavoidable. A family restaurant closes here, a hotel shutters there, a tour company quietly goes out of business. Over time, these small losses accumulate, reshaping entire cities and altering the lives of countless individuals. This quiet unraveling of tourism underscores the urgency of rethinking strategies and addressing the root causes of affordability, safety, infrastructure, and competition before the decline becomes irreversible.